Welcome back. Witness testimony will resume today in the trial for the 3 former Memphis police officers charged in the beating death of Tyre Nichols. In court yesterday, jurors saw video showing 2 EMTs standing by as Nichols sat bleeding on the ground. All 3 of the officers on trial have pleaded not guilty to charges of depriving Nichols of his civil rights through excessive force and failing to intervene. Nichols died 3 days after being beaten by officers following a traffic stop in 2023. For more on this, I'm joined by Neama Rahmani. He is the president of West Coast Trial Lawyers. This is a really heavy case, and it's so disturbing to have to recount some of those details. But the lawyer for one of the former officers on trial chose to play the video I've just mentioned in court. Why? What's the strategy there?
Well, the strategy is to try to get out ahead of the bad evidence. And Errol, you're right. We've all seen the extremely disturbing video of Nichols being killed. And the argument is, and I'm not saying it's a good argument, but really the only argument the defense has is that Nichols was trying to flee. He was trying to evade arrest. He was trying to assault officers. And that's why they struck him. I don't think that argument is going to carry the day, but because the video is so damning, this is the only argument that the law enforcement officers have in this case.
And it's not just the video. You have 2 other former police officers who were criminally charged in this case. They've pleaded guilty. And earlier this week, Emmett Martin III testified that Nichols was helpless, that he was not a threat when taken from his car during his traffic stop. Compare that to what you were saying about he was trying to flee and evade arrest and he was a threat. How significant is the testimony from these officers who've already admitted to doing wrong?
Very significant. I certainly don't agree with the defense argument, but you do have 2 of the 5 police officers who have pleaded guilty to the federal charges. They will also plead guilty in state court as well. So that's very powerful when you have that type of cooperator, co-defendant testimony. And they took the stand and they admitted responsibility, and they will admit responsibility for what they did. And they're being recommended 15 and 40 years in federal prison, respectively. So when you have jurors saying, well, these are some officers that were involved in the beating, they've pleaded, but these others have not, then they're going to question as to what makes these 3 different. Why should we treat them as not guilty or not involved in this when these other 2 have?
And one thing that stands out to me about this case when we compare it to others is the victim was black, the police officers charged were black. There's no racial component. It appears to be about a power dynamic. I'm just wondering, from your point of view, what are some of the takeaways from this trial?
Well, Errol, that's very important. Obviously, we've seen a lot of police officer-related deaths. The most prominent, of course, being George Floyd, and in that case, Derek Chauvin and the other officers involved, whether Asian or white. Here it was 5 black police officers who beat a black victim. And I like the prosecution's theory of the case. They said this was a run tax. These are officers that wanted to enact their revenge on someone who took off. And not only did they beat him to death, they failed to provide medical aid, and they lied to EMTs, and they tried to cover up the beating. They said that Nichols assaulted them. They took off their police-worn body cameras, and they got together to try to fabricate the story of an individual who assaulted them. And that fabrication is even continuing well into this trial today.
Well, Nichols' family can't get him back, but perhaps they'll get some amount of justice. Neama Rahmani, thanks for your time today.
Thanks for having me, Errol.